What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Motorfest. So today is indeed Wednesday, which means we have a bunch of new summits. And not only that, though, today is also like the reset month for Motorfest. So we obviously have 4 new summits here, at least until next month. And the main stage also resets, which is pretty awesome. But for this week, though, guys, we have the Japanese Big Four, which is going to have a pretty interesting looking orange spangled nitro. And I have to admit, that does look pretty dang awesome. But in gold, we have 100,000 bucks. And then, of course, in silver, you also get some free gold parts, and I would probably say that's always going to be helpful. But moving over to the next summit, though, we have the uncommon, which is going to be a Liberty Walk Underglow. I have no idea why I said uncommon first, but I would also say, guys, if you are wondering, this is the exact same one that does come on the Liberty Walk Supra, so I'm kind of interested to see how this one is going to look. But and then, of course, in gold, we have the Nissan Fairlady Z432. And similar to the Crew 2 and or like old Summits, guys, if you do have a car that's in a Summit, you will also get the money back for these vehicles. So that's always going to be a big win. But in silver, we have 10 Legend points and or 50,000 XP to level up the main stage there. So it is going to be pretty action-packed. But looking at the Summit, though, guys, it is going to be a pretty interesting one. So it looks like this Summit is mainly going to be focused on Street Tier 2 and then one Street Tier 1 event here. And one thing I did notice, guys, by the way, there's 3 vehicle-owned races, so it is going to be an interesting summit, guys, especially when it comes down to like the overall scoring. But on the bottom, we have a Slalom and or a Speedtrap, and then finally an Escape. And now moving over to the next summit, guys, we have the Japanese Toge, and I do feel like it's going to be a pretty interesting platinum reward. We have the purple surprise smoke, which I would say does look kind of interesting, but in gold we have 100,000 bucks, silver we have more drift parts, and then finally in bronze, some spare parts. And then moving over to the next summit, guys, we have the Japanese original rice patty, which is kind of an interesting name, but the platinum reward is indeed going to be a car. Now, I unfortunately cannot click on this one because it's too far out, but we are getting an S2000 though, so I can't wait to see how this one compares to the other ones. Now, of course, moving over to the summit, guys, it is mainly going to be based on motorcycles, at least besides the Slalom and or the Escape plus the Speed Trap, but the main events in this summit are indeed going to be based on motorcycles, which, would kind of make sense considering it's based on, like, the Japanese Big Four. But besides that, though, guys, jumping into the first event here is going to be Passion and or Power, so you will also get to use the Suzuki GSX-RR, which, by the way, this is in racing, and I would probably say I'm not the only one that does not have maxed out chemist parts. In fact, I'm actually running random gold parts on this, so I would say 2 minutes and 31 seconds is honestly pretty decent. Do keep in mind, guys, the biggest thing about this event is you have to keep the speed up on this bike, which, by the way, does around 219 miles an hour, so it's not going to be the fastest thing out there. But I would say if you are running a chemist set, though, this thing is probably going to be a monster, and it's most likely going to hold its top speed that much better. But moving over to the next event, though, Joy and Excitement. So for this, you will have to use a Street Tier 2, aka the GPZ 900R, which, by the way, is a very interesting looking motorcycle. And for me, guys, I am obviously a bike guy in real life, so I would love to test this bike out. But I have to admit, if you are riding this bike thinking it's going to handle like that GSX, you are definitely going to be insanely disappointed. But a few tips in this event, though, guys, I would recommend trying manual and or keeping the bike in second to third gear around the corners, and instead of braking insanely hard in the corner, I would recommend downshifting before approaching it. And now moving over to the next event, Perfection and Greatness. So for this, once again, the GSX-RR. I actually really like the way this bike does handle. Now, is it going to be like the best racing bike? That is still going to be in the air because I have not tested the other ones, but for this event though, guys, there is going to be lots of curbs and stuff like that, and I did notice going up and down the sidewalks and or like onto the sidewalks around corners is of course going to help you tremendously with your time. But you can also lose speed going over the curbs though, because the bike sometimes takes like a second to grip, so do keep that in mind on this event. But overall, that one was honestly pretty fun, and also the GSX-RR is honestly pretty dang good. But moving over to the next event, guys, Power and or Freedom. So for this, you can also use a Japanese bike of your choice, and I would probably say many people are most likely going to use the Suzuki, but do keep in mind this thing obviously only does around, let's say, 219 miles an hour again, so it's not going to be like the fastest bike out there. But I have to admit, guys, the GSX-RR is going to be a pretty dang good bike. And now moving over to the next event, speed and efficiency with the lovely Yamaha VMAX 1700, which, by the way, I've never ridden a bike this big in real life, but my goodness, this bike is massive, and I would say it's probably not going to be like the best handling thing out there, but I have to admit, guys, I would recommend trying out my settings on this thing, and I did notice for the most part it does go around corners, but I would also say downshifting and or trying to slow down is also not going to be a bad idea. Now moving over to the last event though is going to be with a street tier 2 Japanese bike of your choice, so I would probably say many people are most likely going to use the Suzuki, but one thing I have to admit, guys, this is also going to be a huge highway event, and one thing that's kind of funny is every street bike I have driven does around 210 miles an hour, so the biggest thing in this event is most likely going to be the corners and how much you can actually keep your speed up in those said corners. So the other thing I would have to admit, guys, having a nitrochemist set in this race is by far going to be insanely helpful, and the main reason for that is you can keep your speed up easier, and I did notice, guys, many of these street tier 2 bikes, at least the Suzuki and or the Honda, do not hold 210 miles an hour, so you will obviously have to keep pushing your nitrous to do so, but overall I wouldn't say this event is bad, but you definitely have to watch the corners and keep that speed up. And now moving over to these skills here, guys, the first one is going to be an escape, and for this I decided to run the Divo. Now do keep in mind, guys, there is going to be a bunch of different vehicles you can run. I would probably say an Alpha GP and or like a hypercar is probably going to be some of the best vehicles, but there is going to be a few different routes on this one that are most likely going to get you like the highest score, but for me, guys, I was like, you know what, let's go a different route with the Divo, which, by the way, this Divo is still going to be just as good as the Crew 2, and I am insanely happy to see that. But the biggest thing in this one, though, guys, is most likely going to be the traffic, because my goodness, they really do get in the way. Now moving over to the next skill, guys, is going to be a slalom, and for this I would recommend once again watching out for the traffic. My goodness, they really do love getting in your way, especially on a slalom, but I do want to recommend, though, I do obviously have a score breaker set for my Ducati and or like the street tier 2 for that matter, and I would say a motorcycle is going to be insanely useful. That way you can dodge the traffic and at least get around them a bit quicker, and I really do find it insane how good a score breaker set is. I would definitely recommend grinding one for basically any class. And then moving over to the final skill in this summit is going to be a speed trap, and I did notice, guys, you can obviously use a dragster of your choice, but I went back to the old reliable thank you SpongeBob. I know the Chevrolet Corvette is going to be insanely good, and even to this day, guys, in Motorfest this car is incredible, but I will also be showing my pro settings at the end of this video, guys, for the Corvette C7, because, well, this thing does not turn at all on stock settings, and you basically see yourself like sliding across the road like a broken hovercraft from the Crew 2, so that is obviously not going to be something we want. But overall, guys, I really did enjoy this summit, and that would most likely come down to the fact that I do love bikes. So besides that, though, guys, let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more insight.